Hi, I'm Randy Pitchford, executive producer of Duke Nukem Forever, and you're watching Game Blog.
What? Did you think I was gone forever?
Hardest thing about tackling the legend that is Duke, honestly, it's you have to not give gravity and weight to the fact that it's the legend of Duke. You have to ignore the pressure, because all that's going to do is make you second guess everything and make you do things over again or make you change things, and half the time it's a coin flip anyway, right? So you just have to ignore all that, and it takes a lot of discipline. I feel like I've done a pretty good job. If we're playing the game and we like it, then yes, I've succeeded. And that's the single-minded goal I have. Yeah.
Hell, I'd still...
Yeah, I'll tell you, the 3D Realms guys, they're brilliant, and they were working their butts off, and they built a great vision for this game. And even as time went on, they found clever ways to account for the fact that we've all been waiting. So that setup, that was part of the 3D Realms team. That was like, yeah, I don't know exactly who came up with that joke, but it might have been Alan, it might have been David. It's definitely some of those guys that were there to the very end and are part of the project today. But what they did was they crafted a vision for the game that we've all been waiting for, and they had iterated it over time. What my commitment is to make sure that we actually get to play it, that vision is completed and it's polished and it works on all the platforms so that we can enjoy it, because we need to be able to play this thing. We've waited too long. So that's been my commitment. My commitment has not been to do it over again or to turn it into something different than what those guys would have done into what I would have done. No, I'll have plenty of time for that. I bought the brand. I can do whatever I want with Duke Nukem. Right now we have to play the game we were supposed to play.
Looks like those alien bastards drank all my beer.
Well, the game has been in the making for many, many years. When I was part of 3D Realms, and I left the studio in the middle of '97. Back then, there was a lot of ideas and a lot of plans. The one consistent track is the kind of high level storyline where, okay, it's after Duke saved the world, and he's living large in his life, and he's got his casino in Vegas. And by the way, the Vegas location was picked because it's very convenient. We've got Area 51 out here, and we've got the desert, and we've got Hoover Dam, and we've got this, and of course, Duke would live in Vegas. So that all is within this proximity that allows us to kind of craft the story where it all just happens right here, where there's traveling and there's distance, but it also can be local enough where it makes sense. Like Duke gets in his car and drives out to Hoover Dam, and of course, Duke's car is a monster truck, and he's driving through the desert and smashing through Old West villages and stuff, and it's that kind of stuff. So that original storyline actually hasn't been intact the whole way. Now details about any particular environment or how that environment is looked or the flow that has changed radically over the years so many times. But there's always been brilliant drive behind those decisions. The very same guys that put together that formula for why Duke 3D was so great are the same minds that are now part of this. It humbles me to say it, but I'm one of them, so it's kind of cool, Well, I'll tell you, Duke doesn't need any help standing out. He kind of does a good job of standing out by himself, and maybe that's his biggest asset. But, there's a lot of good games out there, and one thing I've discovered is that great games do well. And that notion of competition doesn't really apply as much, because we as people who love great games, we'll find them, whether they happen to come a year apart or stack right on top of each other. We'll play the best games because that's what we're in for. But Duke Nukem doesn't have any problem getting attention or standing out. He's one of a kind, So I don't. The man does a much better job selling himself than I ever could. I don't really need to do that. The guy is like, he's just the kind of guy you want to be or spend time with, So I don't really need to worry about that part of it too much. I think it's, a little different for newer gamers, but it's really interesting. Duke has kind of become this kind of meme. Like, he's got a life of his own, and he's become significant in gamer culture. And it's not because of all the great games that have come out. There's something else about him. And we're talking about him, and he's almost like, he's like our Chuck Norris or something. You know what I mean? And it's like, so it's awesome to me. Like, younger gamers who there's no way that they played Duke 3D, or if they did, they should not have been allowed to. That totally get it, and they're getting caught up in it, and they're enjoying it, and I love it, and I think it's really cool.
Whoa, that water's cold.
Lately, I've liked. One of the classics that's just really appropriate in this context is I've got Balls of Steel, because it's right. I decided willingly to be responsible for shipping Duke Forever. So, I don't know. Well, I feel like I had to. I'll tell you, it's really interesting. Every once in a while there are forms of entertainment in all medium, whether you're talking about music or film or television or literature or video games, that definitely push the boundaries a bit. And it's important when we have these examples, because the things that push the boundaries kind of teach us where the line is. Where are the boundaries? They're so fuzzy. What's offensive? What's fine? Like, these are very fuzzy lines, and they're not clear for us as a culture or as individuals even. So when things appear that kind of push those boundaries, it teaches us where the lines are. When something appears and it's fun and we enjoy it and we're okay with it, it shows us, hey, the line's a little farther than we might have thought it was. If something appears and it truly does offend and it truly does create a problem, then the line comes back and we get a little tighter. I think we're finding Duke's entering a climate where we're all kind of looking at it going like, wait a minute, is this racy? But nobody really has a problem with it. Instead, everyone's just enjoying it and having a great time with it. And I think what we're learning is the line's kind of farther out than what I think, people think it is. And because we're having a great time with it. Our culture is wanting this now, and it's a fun test, and it's actually really interesting to be there. In the United States, we've got a Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court is ruling on the issue of how video games are rated and how that affects how they're sold in stores in California. And this was a case based on a law that tried to be passed in California. So it's definitely on the mind of our culture, if the culture can have a collective mind of where these lines are. And I'm very eager to hear how that case is resolved. That's going to be an impactful moment. And it's really interesting that Duke is kind of almost a poster child for this test. Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, it's certainly true that video games are now a part of mainstream entertainment. That in, Western worlds, we're probably about halfway there, where about half of the people would consider themselves video gamers. So we're not fully saturated yet, but we're definitely not in a world where, it's about 10 or 15 or 20% of the people play video games. And we're about halfway there, which makes that really mainstream, really, really culturally significant. And as a result, the people that aren't gamers don't know what to think about it. And so some of them are they don't know if they should be worried or not. It kind of reminds me of, I remember my parents telling me about how the older generation had a problem with rock and roll music, But that's a generation gap, and we're not the first ones to experience a generation gap. But I'll tell you this: someday we're going to have a president of the United States who's got a gamer tag, and we're going to have our policymakers that are gamers, and I think that'll change the climate a lot more.
Coochie coochie.
I'm so glad you're okay.
All right, time for my reward. You want to touch it, don't you?